My name is Patricia Lull, and I'm the bishop in the St. Paul Area Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
Very good.
I chose to go to Yale Divinity School as a Rockefeller Fellow. That was the Rockefeller Brothers Fellowship. And in the course of my time there, the discovery of studying theology, life in community, really important for me. It took me a little longer to find out that I was called to be a pastor. I was a senior in seminary and working in the context of a local congregation when I thought, I wonder if being a pastor rather than a teacher is the right vocational route for me. I had never heard a woman preach until I was in seminary, and so I didn't have a fully formed model of women in ministry. In many ways, going on internship, which I did following my degree from seminary, was a gamble that I would rather spend a year on an internship then than later in my life. I still didn't feel I was called to be a pastor. It was during the time of internship that I realized this was so much me that I switched my intentions for further graduate study and just have been in parish ministry or now synodical leadership ever since. I don't think there have been internal barriers other than the fact that I was a slow learner, that I could be a senior in seminary and then on internship before it ever dawned on me that perhaps I was called to be a pastor. I think the external ones there were times of waiting. I tend to have a pretty resilient disposition, so I made it through those times of waiting. They weren't pleasant when I was waiting for something to open up, a first call, a few other times in my life waiting for a next call, but I don't think I would name those as barriers that were ones that discouraged me from staying the course. I come from a family in which my father was a factory worker, and my mother, when she was working, was in a factory plant, worked in the office. They were very encouraging of the 4 children in our family. My brother Tim also became a pastor. So by the time I voiced it, there was great encouragement. I think probably some of my high school teachers would say they saw it coming long before I did. Oh, absolutely. 3+ decades later, we are much more accustomed to women being our local pastors and also women being our bishops. We're not fully accustomed to the role of bishop, but I think for a pastor to be a female is just as likely as for a pastor to be a male. In our part of the Lutheran tradition, our good biblical exegesis opened the door. We were biblical scholars first, so I think that's one of the rich reasons. There is no biblical barrier in our understanding of the message of Scripture. But I think, secondly, the church has needed the leadership of women, and therefore there's a kind of pragmatic, women bring gifts that are needed. That's part of the logic as well. This past weekend, I was a teacher for the leaders in a congregation, taught all of Saturday afternoon, and spoke about the culture in which we live being one of accomplishment and measuring up and setting the bar high. We have a lot of language we use, and how amazing it is to have a different message from our God that makes all of us welcome, including when we are not at our peak of perfect behavior or deepest thinking or strongest faith. And that's how I tend to speak of grace, as that word of forgiveness and welcome, especially for those of us. This past weekend, I was a teacher for the leaders in a congregation, taught all of Saturday afternoon, and spoke about the culture in which we live being one of accomplishment and measuring up and setting the bar high. We have a lot of language we use. And how amazing it is to have a different message from our God that makes all of us welcome, including when we are not at our peak of perfect behavior or deepest thinking or strongest faith. And that's how I tend to speak of grace, as that word of forgiveness and welcome, especially for those of us who worry and work too much. I hope people would say of my leadership, boy, she stirred us up. We were able to do more together than we had imagined. She helped us try new things. She drew us together. She respected a whole variety of voices and perspectives. That's what I hope would be said about my leadership. In different generations, there are different opportunities for who can be the wise leader. Women domestically, within their own homes, within their own clans or tribes, have always played a significant role. But I think now we see throughout the world, not in absolutely every culture, but in many cultures, women as those who can be the reconcilers where there's been civil war, women who have fresh enthusiasm for the work of God, women who are willing to put more of their life and their economic future at risk, are rising up in the church, which will mostly not be well-paying positions, and the daring is there to go and do that important work. I happen to think that's from God.